Hey there, this is Daniel. Welcome to Flying Chariots The Rise. Today's guest is Michael Kameron, an ordinary individual whose life was anything but mundane. From his early years in a strict Roman Catholic Irish community in 1970s East End London, he was exposed to a world that disallowed the existence of the paranormal. Yet, fate had other plans for him, as he found himself entangled in the extraordinary. Living in a house haunted by poltergeist activity, Michael had encounters with enigmatic, mystical beings and hooded figures. Unaware, during his childhood, he perceived these experiences as normal, believing everyone encountered such supernatural phenomena. Only upon reflection did he realize the peculiarity of his life, discovering that he stood apart from others who dismissed such inexplicable encounters. Today he's here to tell us his story. And guys, if you like today's episode, please leave a like, a nice comment, or subscribe to the channel. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Deezer, and every other podcast platform. Okay, let's start, Michael. Your book, A Lifetime of Alien and Paranormal Encounters, was warmly suggested to me by the esteemed publisher Philip Mantle, and a big shout out goes out to Philip Mantle from Flying Disc Press. And folks, if you're looking for great books on the subject of UFOs and the paranormal, visit flyingdiscpress.blogspot.com for the latest news when it comes to the world of the incredible and unbelievable. And for you merch lovers out there, please visit shop.flyingdiscpress.com and get yourself a nice hoodie or a shirt maybe, or a bag where you can put in all these awesome books you just bought there. So, Michael, the title of your book, of course, made me very curious, and that's why I contacted you and asked for an interview, of course. I downloaded your book as an audiobook and I enjoyed listening to it a lot, though I'm not completely through yet, as I told you before. But you've experienced some very, very exciting things in your life, and very scary things in your life too. In your book, you write about poltergeist activities, about hooded figures. You had, and that's interesting. You had missing time experiences and so much more. But before we get into all that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself at first?
Hi, I'm Michael Kameron, and I was born in London, England, in the East End of London. I actually was bang in the middle of the city of London and the Tower of London, where the Queen was at the time when she was alive. So if you walked one way, it was either 10 minutes, depending on how fast you walked to each one. But I grew up actually in a school, a Roman Catholic schoolhouse, in the school grounds. My dad was the school keeper, so he looked after the school. It was a junior school, and me and my brother Sean, who's mentioned in my book, we both attended that school. But my childhood home was actually owned by the Roman Catholic Church, so it was a school with nuns and priests. So I come from a strict Roman Catholic environment, growing up in the 1970s in London. This is basically where my journey into the high strangeness began.
Yeah, and high strangeness is a good way to put it. It's very strange. If I remember right, when I first listened to your audiobook, it started with would you call it already the poltergeist activity? You told us the story about your grandmother and the rocking chair. Please explain.
Yeah, when I was growing up, my dad at the time, he would tell me these stories, before I was born. The house that we lived in, it started to experience poltergeist activity, what we would know now as poltergeist activity. And this seemed to happen when my grandmother had passed, when she died. And there seemed to be strange activity occurring in the house. There was, for instance, in one of the rooms where she used to sit on a rocking chair, the rocking chair would move on its own. In the nighttime, you could hear it creaking, but it was only basically when my parents and my two other brothers, who I mentioned the book, Francis, and Kevin, um, they were there as well, and Sean. But it only happened at night time when they went to bed. So my dad was often getting up out of the bed, running down the stairs, thinking there was somebody in the house. And he used to go to, eventually he would search the house downstairs, search each room, and then he got to the room where my grandmother would be, when she was alive, and he'd just listen outside the door, he said, and he could hear the chair rocking. And when he actually went into the room, the chair was moving, but then come to a standstill, like someone had just stepped out of it.
Very scary. Are you telling me that the rocking chair stopped abruptly? Like,
Yeah, as soon as he said as soon as he opened the door, it was moving, and then it suddenly come to a stop. And he said it's almost like somebody had been in it but got up out of it.
wow.
But normally there's still a little rocking motion, but it didn't. It just come to a complete stop.
How did you guys handle this situation? I imagine this a very stressful situation for all of you guys.
That didn't stop there because there was cold spots in different areas of the house, and also on the house that I grew up in, the wall, the walls there, they were solid. If you banged them, you would just have a small thud sound. But in the night time, they the walls running up. It was up basically where it was running up the staircase. So somebody was hitting the wall, but instead of having this thud, it actually used to echo like a big bang, bang, like that. And my dad again was up out of the bed and going down the stairs looking, but there was never no one there. And because we lived in a close knit Irish community, um, you know, um, they didn't really at first they didn't really say anything to anyone because in those days you didn't really speak about it. I mean, we still don't speak about it now, but in what I mean in the world. But eventually, though, they called in a priest from the church. My dad had a lot of friends in the Roman Catholic Church as well as in the Vatican and Rome. He knew a lot of high-ranking people, and he called in somebody, and they basically went into each part of the house and blessed it, and then a little while after that, it stopped.
So did it stop
Yeah,
forever, for good, or
well, that part of it stopped. Yes, eventually things started to take another turn. And normally, this was seemed to be centered around myself and my brother, who's 2 years older than me, Sean. And that's when, we started to have various things happen. I mean,
before?
I might add though, sorry, I might add those that when this poltergeist activity was happening, and that my brother Francis, I was told, was in one room laying in bed, and the big oak wardrobe was pushed over on top of him,
Oh wow,
and
yeah.
he wasn't. Luckily, he wasn't hurt, but obviously he was in shock. And Kevin had experienced someone brushing past him on the stairs, and he actually tumbled down the stairs. So as a result of this, so he again, he wasn't hurt. He landed at the bottom, but he wasn't hurt. But obviously he was, shocked and frightened of having something brush past you that you can't see.
I was about to ask
Um,
that question because, of course, I heard it in the audiobook, but some of the listeners didn't. I was about to ask if there was physical altercation too. So if somebody got hurt or something. There's people who got like marks on their body and stuff like or scratches. Did you experience that too?
do you mean did my family experience it or myself?
Yes, you or your family. Yeah.
I mean, as a result of my other experiences, yes, I've got literally on my left leg thigh, I have a burn mark there that I actually got one day coming home from work when I was older. I mean, I was coming home from work and I decided to sleep on the sofa. When I woke up, I still had my clothes on. I just lay down It was a hot night, and but when I got up and I had a shower, there was a big hole in my leg, literally bleeding, and I was in so much pain. And I actually went to accident emergency, and they looked at it and bathed it, but it was so deep I could put two of my fingers inside of it. And they said to me that it looked like it'd been burnt with a laser. And they said, but they couldn't understand why, because obviously my jeans were still intact. There was no burn mark. And then they said that you would have woken up screaming with, a wound. And it was so deep that the burn, the burning destroyed my tissue. So it was unable to heal again. So I got the mark there still. And you can still basically see it where you can put two fingers there.
Wow.
Um, and and I do wake up sometimes here now, where I am now, and I got burn marks on my body, and I can't explain them. I got a burn mark below as well, on the same left leg, which it's beginning to heal a little bit now, but it took at least 6 months to go away. And again, I don't have no explanation for that.
So that
So
means
and then you get bruises and everything, but your left brain seems to kick in sometimes, and I could have knocked it at some point and then it's come up, so I don't always think it's to do with my experiences. It could be something more rational.
could be everything, but it's strange though. So you have no idea where it comes from. That's crazy. Burn marks.
No.
Strange, very strange. And you still experience this kind of stuff. That's also strange. Do you? We heard the poltergeist story, of course, with your grandmother, with your father, and your brothers, of course. But did these ghost or poltergeist activities stop for good, or do you still have to this day some experiences?
The experiences into the abduction stuff still is still ongoing for me. That never ends. You might have periods of times when it stops for a period of time, but it soon comes back again. Um, it's I think for abductees, it goes on until you die, basically. And I think you'll find that with people like who you interviewed, Philip Kinsella.
Mhm.
I believe probably these go on for him as well. It's an ongoing process that we at the moment can't stop.
Mhm.
We don't seem to have much control over it.
When did it happen first for you with the abduction stuff? What was the first experience?
I would say it's probably when me and Sean witnessed, what we classified as a daylight disc, flying saucer, a typical, disc-shaped object,
Mm.
metallic object, which I mentioned in the book. Um, it seemed to go from the abduction stuff seemed to go from there. But I did have before this, I did have the contact with what I now know, as Nordics, as the humanoid-looking race. And I don't know about Sean then, but this is what I was experiencing at the time. But I don't believe there was any abduction in that. So I believe they were just visiting me.
Sorry, let me interrupt you right here. So the Nordics, you mean the tall blonde ones with the pale skin, of course?
Hmm.
And was there interaction with these guys? Did they talk to you, or was there telepathic communication stuff like that?
Yeah, when I started to see these, I didn't know what they were. I mean, in the time I grew up, there was nothing, especially in the environment I was in. There was nothing that could influence my mind in that way. I didn't hardly watch TV. There was only three channels at the time, and I just didn't have time for that. And my family were quite strict, so I didn't have much interactions with so much as the outside world really. When I started to interact with these type of beings, I just remember that they used to be in the house. They were always around me. I could have been up in my room, and suddenly they're there. They didn't come into the door. They didn't come through the door. They would just appeared, and it was normally a male and a female, typically quite tall, athletic build, wearing the blue uniforms, long blonde hair, pretty much similar, only for the fact that one was male, one was female. But there was often either I often had contact with a male and female, but sometimes there was another male, but that other male was often seen on their own. And they used to, what I remember of them is they used to play games for me. Like one of them was like follow the leader. And they used to talk to me, but telepathically. So, but to this day, I don't remember what they said. As much as most of my memories have got what you call, marker memories. So it's like they're burnt into your brain, basically. And so from that early age, from what I wrote in the book, is from my memories. So I'm able to write in quite a lot of detail about those experiences. But obviously, there are parts of it that are missing, which I believe is, in the subconscious still. Not it's not being released into my conscious mind yet.
And these abduction stories, they only happen to you and not your brothers, right?
Well, Sean had interactions like me with certain things, but I don't know if he continued to have any experiences ongoing. I didn't have. At one time we were quite close when we were younger, but as the years gone on, we drifted apart. And as I explained in the book, I wasn't sure if that was a result of the experiences I was having and he was having. Much later on in life, I would talk about or try to understand them, but my other brothers, they don't want to know.
Mm.
They don't want to know. They don't want to talk about it.
Yes. And you also stated in the book that one of your brothers, or both maybe, got a little bit angry at you because they said it's your fault, all that happens.
I mean, what's difficult is, I mean, it's difficult when you get ridiculed by people you don't know, but when it's by your own family, it cuts a little bit more deeper, because especially, some people, when they're having these experiences and they don't want to know, they will basically try to shut you down. They don't want to know because it's scary for them.
Yes.
So over a period of time, yeah, I did have that from my brothers, the teasing, and when I was younger, I mean, when I was a child and teenager, that continued a little bit. So you don't even mention it to them.
In the introduction of your book, one can read, and I will read it out here for the listeners. Michael Kameron was just an ordinary person who experienced both sides of the paranormal, from alien abductions to encountering strange mystical beings, and so on and so on. So you're calling alien encounters also paranormal, right?
We see that there's a link between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of the communities now that we're in, we often see that there seems to be some sort of link between the paranormal and the alien phenomena. It seems to go hand in hand.
Yes, I think so too, by the way. And looking back now, I'm 43 years old now, and when I was just a little boy, 9 or 10 years old, I don't remember. I had a, let's call it, paranormal encounter in my room too back then, and
Sure.
the same time it happened, there was a kind of blue light shining through the window, and
Mm.
some people later told me that, yeah, it's all connected and there could be a UFO involved and stuff like that. I find it very interesting. I find the idea very interesting. Yeah, that all could be, yeah, connected to each other. But
Because I think,
yeah,
sorry, yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say that I think over, in the earlier stages, I think we seem to have separated them at one time. It was the paranormal here, there was the UFO stuff there, then you got the cryptid things there, and like Bigfoot and Dogman, and like that. But now we can see, I suppose, through much deeper, more research, and maybe contacting through social media. We're when we're in contact with different people that are having these experiences, we can see that that it's all linked in some way. It all fits together in some way.
Right.
We haven't got all the pieces to the puzzle, which is like a multi-dimensional puzzle, but I think we're getting there. It's slow, but we're beginning to understand much more about the phenomena.
Right. Multidimensional is the keyword, I think. Yes, and you're absolutely right. Years ago, we separated cryptic encounters like Bigfoot or Dogman, as you stated already,
Sure.
and UFO and paranormal. They were all separated. But now people coming out and telling stories about Bigfoots getting in and out of UFOs, or orbs appear and then orbs disappear and suddenly there's Bigfoot. Like you said, everything is connected. I think so too. It's a great thought, definitely. But let's go on with the alien encounters you had and maybe have. What other beings did you encounter throughout your story?
I mean, most of the contact I've had with other beings are the greys, the typical greys. They're and from what I've discovered, it's that they run the abduction programs, and from what it appears to be to me anyway, through my research and speaking with other abductees, it begins as a child. So sometimes I get people when they're saying to me, well, they've experienced abduction by the greys as an adult, but that just tells me you've experienced it as a child but you don't remember.
Mhm.
But I don't often tell them this because it can be dangerous to tell somebody that without them first having a deeper understanding. It can be quite frightening to know it's been happening to you all your life.
Yes.
So there is that level of responsibility.
Mhm. What would you say was the last encounter you had?
Probably 2 months ago.
2 months ago. And how conscious have you been throughout the incidents?
Not much. A lot of my abductions are outside of the body.
Mhm.
So I do, as I mentioned in the book, I'm an astral projector. I'm able to travel outside of my body and have done so since a child. So there are a lot of times when I'm leaving my body. I can't speak for anyone else, of course, but from my own experience, sometimes when you're leaving your body, they're basically waiting for you to leave
Mhm.
so they can take you. Other times you're forced out of your body to be taken. There's a lot of information, I guess, in my head that I'm still looking to release from my abductions. As I said in my book, last year I was diagnosed with complex PTSD,
Mhm.
so which is a little bit different from PTSD in that you're experiencing a lot of trauma over a period of time, over years that it's never been resolved. But my trauma is from my abductions as a child that has never been really addressed. And although in the 1990s I did look to have regressive hypnosis, but
Mhm.
I was basically laughed at. So the hypnotherapists that I went to, they didn't believe in that could be done, and they just said to me, "Oh, you're crazy." And so at that time, I never sort of went back to it.
Might be an odd question, and please don't mind me asking it, but in what state of mind are you now these days?
I'm fine, but it's just that I have trauma, basically, in the sense of, I get a lot of flashbacks. I can't,
Mhm.
even as an adult, I can't turn my light off. I have to have my light on. Um, Sometimes if I'm out and I feel something around me, it can be, it can cause me a problem, really. I
Mhm.
can get like panic attacks.
Oh yeah.
And you get a lot of pains in your body from experiencing trauma.
Mhm.
So I'm seeing somebody for that, really, just to help me, really, when I'm experiencing this. It's difficult, and for a long time, it's always difficult as an abductee. It's difficult to talk to anyone about it. When I was growing up, there was no one around. There was no one I could talk to about it. So I was having these experiences. I didn't understand what they were. I didn't understand why I was having them. And there was just no one there. So you're left with this on your own to deal with.
Mhm.
I mean, in my second book, I'll talk about that much more detail. So it's quite darker, really, the narrative in the second book. So that will have a trigger warning on it. I mean, even now, I mean, like as an example, about 2 years ago, for an example, somebody that I met, him and his wife, we were talking about different things, not this stuff, and they said, "Oh, why don't you come over and have a meal with us?" But then, for some reason, they discovered that I was an abductee. And after that, they just basically didn't want to know me because they thought if I entered their house, it might happen to them. But it doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
It's for people outside of the phenomena, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I understand that.
People can be scared of you
Yes.
because they just don't understand the phenomena. It's like somebody, if your house is haunted, they might not want to come into your house. Although they may experience some things, the abduction programs are different. They take you as a child. They don't take anyone else unless they're on those programs.
I understand both sides. A few years back, maybe like almost 15 years back now, or maybe more,
Mm,
I often visited a good friend of mine and I loved his parents. They were so good to me,
mm,
and I loved his parents. And his father, shortly before he passed away, he died
mm,
of something. He had a heart disease or something. He died in his bed, and shortly before, and he had a mental disease as well. And
sure,
he told me there's a big war in the universe with big spaceships and stuff. And I wasn't into that stuff at all. So back then I didn't know about UFOs and paranormal stuff. And always when I visited him and I was alone with him, he told me that he knows about big starships and UFOs and stuff, and they're fighting.
sure,
And he said, "Look what I can do." And he said, "Look at the church and look at the cross." And I'm moving the cross now. And he moved his hands and he looked at the cross. And I was scared of him. Tell you that I loved him to death, but I was so scared of him. But because he was not like this a year before. He turned
sure,
his mental disease or illness turned him into that, and I was so scared of him. So I can understand a little bit. I can understand how people feel when they talk to people. I have to say, like us, because I've seen a UFO too when I was 16. I saw a triangle-shaped UFO. I haven't had any encounters, as far as I know,
mm,
but I've seen this UFO, and I had some paranormal activities going on. But every time I talk to people about it, looking at me like this. I don't know what to think about me after I told them my story. And some people tend to, yeah, better not talk to me anymore after that. So I can relate a little bit. But let's dive a little bit deeper into your story. You write about hooded figures, and I heard a lot of stories about these hooded figures.
yeah. This particular encounter happened one night when I was basically left downstairs on my own, and my everyone had gone up to the bed. I was the last one there, and I remember grabbing a drink from out of the fridge. Some what we call like treetop orange juice that you dilute. It was quite popular back then when I was a child. And I had it in an orange beaker, and I was going up. I was turning all the lights off downstairs, and I thought I'd turn the light off on the stairs case, which I shouldn't have done at the time. And as I was going up the stairs and I turned the corner, I come face to face with a hooded figure. And, it had its head basically bowed down. So it had a long cloak on it, which was covering its, going right down. You couldn't see anything really. Um, and I was trying to get up the stairs, but this thing was blocking my path. And at first, I thought it was a monk, a ghost. But then at some point, I remember the beaker in my hand falling away from my hand because obviously I was frightened what it was. I just wanted to get up the stairs and then bang and close my door. But then when it raised its head slightly, I could see it had big black eyes. And again, at the time I didn't know what any of these things were. I just didn't know. I didn't have that knowledge. It vanished, and then I run up the stairs. So it's, I don't know to this day what it was, but was it a monk? Was it, or was it a grey disguised as a monk for whatever reason? I don't know, but I just know, it scared me the wits out of me. I was thinking I should have put the lights on, but I remember telling my parents about it. So, I mean, I did mention, we did mention things, me and Shong did, to our parents, but sometimes what I found odd about it, looking back, is that a lot of the time they didn't react in a way you would think they would. It was almost like they knew
Mm.
that this stuff happened, or they'd sing it themselves.
Mhm.
So their reactions to it was quite, in a way, bizarre. Wasn't normal, I guess. I'm trying to say.
There was no communication between you and the hooded figure, right?
No,
No communication at all. So, but it was looking at you, right? And
that's right.
you locked eyes with each other, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what was your feeling when you locked eyes?
I basically wanted to get out. I didn't want to be
Yeah.
there, basically. I could have run down the stairs, but I didn't. I don't think at that time, when you're seeing these type of, whatever they are, creatures, ghosts, aliens, your mind doesn't work that way. What you would normally do is, yeah, I'd go the opposite way. You'd run down the stairs but you don't think like that. Your mind sort of comes to a standstill. I guess you're trying to rationalize, or understand what it is you're seeing. And obviously then you got the fear factor,
Mm.
the fight or flight syndrome. Your adrenaline's flooding your body and causing slight paralysis. But when it vanished, I just legged it up the stairs and run into my room, and I was hoping that it doesn't follow me.
I'm sure you ask yourself the question a lot of times, why is this happening to me? And why was this shadow figure here? And do you have an idea why it was there? Was it a random encounter, or do you think it was here for a purpose?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I questioned a lot about it at one time. I sort of considered it happened to a lot of people, because I didn't. My parents seemed to treat it like it was, like it was normal. They didn't really say, oh, what you would say. I didn't have anyone else to talk to about it, so I couldn't really, you know, have any comparison. I couldn't see if anyone was having it or not. It's only like later on in the 90s, I guess, that I started to understand it more, try to find out, get answers. Even to this day, a lot of abductees don't understand why it's happening to them. They don't understand, what makes me different from another person that could be standing next to me, and I've having these experiences, and they're not. But one of the things I'd like to point out to you, though, is that I don't consider myself, and I'm pretty sure a lot of authentic abductees, they don't consider themselves to be in any way, shape, or form special. We're not special. I mean, for me, this is a curse. I didn't ask for this. I don't remember asking to be taken away as a child or as a teenager or a young adult. I have not given my permission to anyone. And I know some people say in the new age community, so you've agreed to it. Well, I'm sadly that's not the case. I haven't. And I just find it a form of violation on my part. And all these other children that are taken, it's if it was you know, I mean, for an example, I went somewhere the other day and it was a ufologist, he's 30 years experience in the field and of crop circles, and he was really good at that. But then when someone asked him a question about abductees, he played it down and said, oh, that's paralysis. And when these people were taken, we're talking about kidnapping, they're fine. It's all good. Nothing to worry about there. And I was listening to him and I felt actually quite insulted by this person talking about something he clearly has no idea what he's talking about. And it's not like that at all. I know that there are occasions when people, they're not getting kidnapped. They may have contact, interactions with, other beings, and that's fine and that's good, And if these beings were, to come, that's how they should do it. They shouldn't be taking people or kidnapping them or forcing them to do things, because for me that's insidious. It's the behavior of somebody who is malevolent towards you, rather than benevolent. But for me, the experiences apart from the Nordics wasn't ever good. If it was a human kidnapping a child, abducting a child, we would do something with that. We'd call the police. But because these are, non-humans that are taking children, kidnapping and abduction, we're not able to do anything about this. But for people to play it down and say it's not like that. Well, I can tell you now, it is like that, and I find it very offensive when people say that. I'm talking about researchers. At least do your own work.
Did these beings ever give you a reason or an explanation why you're getting abducted?
No, not for me. No, I
Never.
mean no, no. And if they have, I don't remember. So that's the only honest answer I can give you, really. Rather than say something that's that I don't really know. No, they didn't. No, I mean even now, you ask yourself the same question. Why me? Why? What in a way, what have I done to deserve that? Because my experiences were awful. They weren't nice,
Mm.
and with these beings, they just couldn't care less.
Michael, can I ask you a private question? Are your
Mm.
parents still around?
No, no. Um, in my book, I say my dad died when I was 15,
Mm.
and then a little while later, my mum died of breast cancer. She was in a coma, and I was at work, and I come home, and my brother told me she's in hospital. We went up to the hospital when she was in a coma. The doctor said to come back, the following day. We got about a week with her, and she died on that night. So we never saw her again. But I'm pretty much, I'm really, my family are all dead, really. I mean, my uncles, my aunts. I have my brothers, but I've not seen my brothers literally for about 15 years.
Yeah, man. I'm so sorry, man.
So because we're my two brothers, like Francis and Kevin, they're a lot older than me and Sean. When we were still young, they were already going out and socializing. They'd already left school, working, and so. But as the years have gone on, I don't really have contact with them. I've obviously in my book, I had a chance to speak to Sean um, over the phone, and I asked him then. You see, I took the opportunity to ask him about those experiences that we had, and he still remembered them.
Mm.
So and I did ask him if I could mention him in my book, and he says yes. So, but we just don't have, we're not close really.
Mm.
You know, and that's a shame, but it's I've struggled with that over the years about family. Having family. I'm the youngest out of my family and my brothers, but it's just not to be. And I beat myself up over it for a long, long time. But then, but now I've found peace with myself. And I don't wish any, we don't get on, but I don't wish any badness towards them. I wish them well, and
Yeah.
we're just different. That's all.
Yeah.
Different people.
That's a good thing that you found peace with
Mm,
yourself. I I can relate a little bit. I'm 43 now, and I left my family when I was 17. Were in big fights. Um, and it just didn't work anymore. And now I'm, yeah, longer gone than I was there, so to speak. And
mm,
it's not always a good feeling, but I also found peace, or made peace with myself. And now it's good the way it is. But like I said, I can relate a little bit, and I'm very sorry for your loss with your mother and stuff. But that's what my question was: if they ever heard your full story, like everything that happened. I think that never happened, right?
probably, yeah. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, my mum knew that I was sensitive to various energies. She knew that, and as I mentioned in the book, my parents did have paranormal experiences, but they didn't often talk about them. Every now and again, my dad would say something to me, off the cuff, so to speak. And you think, where did that come from? But my dad wasn't somebody to, make up tales. He was very like, he's very down to earth. And if he said something, it was, there was something in it. He wasn't one to, fantasize and make up stories just for the sake of it. He just wasn't like that.
Mhm.
And my mum, as I said, that, I believe she was an abductee, but she never really spoke about it. I think partly because she didn't understand it, partly because she was afraid of what people might think in the communities. My dad was very respected in the community where he was. He wasn't just a schoolkeeper, he was a union man, so he fought for the workers. He was very involved with the church. Um, he helped so many kids from the school. He was basically their football coach. So he did a lot of other things that normally wouldn't come with that type of job.
Mm.
So I guess he wouldn't speak about things like that.
It's a great story, but it's a sad story also, and it's so interesting what happened to you. Although, like I said, it's sad, and all these experiences weren't good. In fact, they were pretty bad for you. Let's talk about these. You talked about missing time experiences, and I think you talked also about the Oz factor.
Well, the Oz factor, coined by Jenny Randalls, the British author
Yeah.
and investigative journalist who was again part of Bufora, which, is similar to Mufora in America. Yeah, there was times, when me and Sean saw the disc-shaped object in the school grounds. We had missing time then. We went into an altered state, I guess, of consciousness where the immediate environment changes. So there's hardly any sounds, and you tend to, you tend to go into just a trance state, like you're frozen to the spot. And one minute, the for us the ship was there, and the next minute it was gone in a what looked to be a short space of time, but wasn't. So, and again, with the encounter that I had in the book that I spoke about the tall white grey, when I started to write the book, and you're going through the various drafts of the book.
Mhm.
So I done 5 drafts. A lot of people don't do that because I wanted to get it right, and obviously I'm
Yeah.
learning my craft as a writer.
Mhm.
And when you're writing a book like this, it's difficult because you're not telling other people's stories per se. You're talking about something that's quite deeply traumatizing, and it's when I was thinking about it and putting it down on paper or on a computer. I done both. I wrote on paper and on a computer.
Oh.
And when you're putting it down and you're thinking about it, you're reliving it again. So it's quite difficult. And there was a lot of tears come up in regards to it because it was quite difficult to process and see it on paper, so to speak. When I started it, I was going to have it as a much bigger book. But then I started to, as I went on, I thought to myself, I'd write it in volumes. So this particular book one, volume one, is primarily about growing up in my childhood home in this area, in this location, as a child, and then as a teenager, and slightly as um, a young adult. But then when I do book two, this continues on because when I was having these experiences, I didn't think for the life of me it would follow me. So, so it continues. And I didn't realize that. Okay. When I thought it was something I was having there. I didn't realize this is a process that goes on in your life and you're literally stuck with it for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
Unless of course things change and we discover other information that maybe is going to be key to stopping these for abductees.
Yeah.
In the foreseeable future, maybe. I'm not holding I'm not holding out for that, but it's good to have some sort of faith in that
Mhm.
in this process. But I so I decided to do the volumes. It was very therapeutic for me as well. There was a lot of things I was holding on to, in regards to my dad's death. I still carried that. And so by writing it down and reliving it, I was actually processing this information, through my mind and through my heart,
Mhm.
and letting go of some of that trauma was let go of. So I was able to find some sort of peace with it.
Writing as a therapy, that it's a good thing to write down your stuff. And I was a singer for many years, and I wrote my own lyrics, and I
Nice.
also put in a lot of stuff from my private life. I suffered from depressions many years back, and panic attacks and stuff like that, like really, really bad panic attacks. And yeah, the depressions were very, very hard. Also,
Sure.
it's many years back, and when I wrote my lyrics, I always put all my heart into these lyrics. And I felt better afterwards. Like you said, you're crying while you're writing, and you're going through stuff again and again, but it's good in a way.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, when I wrote the book, as you can see, it's in order to. I didn't want the book just to be about my experiences in the paranormal or as an abductee. I wanted people that read the book to have an idea of who I am and my experiences. So that's why I added. There are some sensitive issues in the book that I've encountered, but that's all part of I believe it's part of the process of being an abductee as well. It
Mhm.
seems to, like again with MK Ultra, you
Yeah.
know,
Oh yeah.
so this is part and parcel, it seems, of of being an abductee and the amount of control that is basically forced upon you in order to engage sometimes with these, um, non-human, as I say, non-human beings, and also the military. There's a military, I believe, process in that for me.
Yeah. MK Ultra is also a very interesting topic. I had a podcast about this before. It's very, very interesting and very, very deep stuff. Very, very frightening stuff. But let's wrap it up for today. I have to say, thank you very, very much for being so open today and telling me your story. Although
Sure.
didn't speak about everything, but that's a good thing. We want people to read your book, and if you want to read the book, we'll put a link to Michael's book in the description box below this video.
Thank you.
And yeah, Michael, thank you, and please stay with me for 2 more minutes, okay?
Sure. Thank you.